Hello, my name is Christopher Scott. Thanks for joining me for another Basics of the Bible video. In these videos, I'm going Genesis through Revelation, covering the entire Bible. So in the description down there, there is a link to the playlist with 75 different videos that I have done covering the entire Bible. And today we are looking at the book of Job. And the one-word description I'm giving for Job is suffering. Suffering is what the book of Job is about. But before we look at Job, we need to review the Bible together and the story together. So the Bible is based on 66 books that are in our Protestant evangelical Bibles. There's 66 books in the Bible, 39 in the Old Testament, 27 in the New Testament. And out of those 39 in the Old Testament, there are 5 groups of books. There's 5 groups that make up those 39 books. There's the Pentateuch, the 5 books of Moses, or the Torah, Genesis through Deuteronomy. Then there's the historical books, Joshua through Esther. Then there's the wisdom books, which Job is part of. There's 5 wisdom books. Then there are the 5 major prophets and the 12 minor prophets. And so today we're looking at the first of the wisdom books, which is Job. And that one-word description I gave you of Job is suffering. Job is one of the most difficult books in the Old Testament, or even the Bible, to understand. First, the Hebrew in it is very complex and technical. It was originally written in Hebrew, and it's a difficult Hebrew to translate and understand. Second, it's a difficult book because God allows suffering to occur. And third, there is sometimes little explanation for that suffering. We wish there was more. This book reminds us that Satan roams the earth and rules the earth. Yet God is still sovereign and in control. Nothing occurs without God knowing and allowing it to happen on the earth. That's what the book of Job is all about. There's a key verse for the book of Job that I chose, Job 23:10, chapter 3, 23:10. This is in the middle of Job's suffering. So if you're familiar with the book, chapters 1 and 2, Satan approaches God in God's presence. Satan says, look at that guy Job. He's only obedient and loyal to you because you have blessed him. And Satan says, you take everything away and Job won't stick with you. God says, well, you can, just don't hurt Job. So Satan appears on the scene, kills Job's sons, takes his livestock and kills them, and Job has nothing except his wife. And so in the middle of this suffering, Job says these things. He says, but he, talking about God, but he knows the way I take. When he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold. He knows the way I take. When he has tried me, I shall come forth as gold. That's the New American Standard, using the Ryrie Study Bible to read that from. That's the key verse, Job 23:10. So let's talk about some of the more technical parts of this book. The author of the book, we do not know who wrote the book, but some people suggest it was Job himself that wrote it down. Some people say Moses. Some have said Mordecai, Ezra, Solomon, or even Elihu, who is one of the guys in the book talking with Job. So some people have said those, but we really don't know. We don't know a whole lot about the audience, who it was directed to, but we do know that it was written really early in the Bible. So probably one of the first books of the Bible to be written based on the Hebrew language. 2000 BC is when the events take place, and it probably was written around that time or similar because just the Hebrew language is technical. It talks about things early on, and so I'll reference why I believe that. So when talking about the date that the book of Job takes place, when it took place, there's really 3 big views on this. Some people say it was during the Babylonian exile that started in 605 BC. Some people say it's after 605 BC. Some people might say it was during the time of Solomon. Solomon ruled from 970 BC to 931. And other people might say that it took place during it was written during the time of Abraham. And so I follow the Abraham view, 2000 BC, that it was about the time of Abraham, before the Exodus, before Moses, things like that. And there are 8 reasons I want to give you that support that view, that Job took place and was written near the time of Abraham. If not written then, at least it took place during the time of Abraham. It could have been written and compiled later, but Job lived during the time of Abraham and the events took place then. So the date. It says that Job lived more than 140 years after God restored his life, right? So he lived about 200 years, which was common to live that long during the time of Abraham, to live about 200 years. And we see that based on Job 42:16. It says he lived 140 years after God restored his wealth. Second reason that Job was lived about 2000 AD was the economy around Abraham's time depended on livestock, and so did Job's. So Job 1:3, Job's wealth is measured in livestock. A third reason Job was living around the time of Abraham is that Job was the priest of his family. Job 1:5 says he was kind of the priest in charge of the spiritual righteousness of his family, which was just like Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And that's if you read Genesis 8:20, Genesis 12:7-8, and Genesis 15:9-10. Abraham was also the priest of his family. A fourth reason is there's no reference to the nation of Israel, to the Exodus, or the Mosaic Law. So it likely took place before then. Those were huge events for the Israelites. You know, the Exodus, the Mosaic Law, or just the nation of Israel that started with Abraham, those aren't mentioned or even referred to in the book. A fifth reason that Job was alive during the time of Abraham is that there are possible references to the flood in Sodom and Gomorrah in Job 38, verses 8-11, and Job 18:15 are possible references to those Genesis events. Another reason that Job lived during the time of Abraham is that some Hebrew words only occur in Genesis and Job, and those are personal names and place names, very specific things. You know, places were called certain things at one time, but then later on they get renamed. And so that's what matches up. That's based on Roy Zuck in the Old Testament Theology, his book Old Testament Theology, page 10. He talks about some of that. Another reason Job lived around the time of Abraham is that Job contains parallels to wisdom literature of the ancient Near East that was written during the Babylonian times, Akkadians, and Sumerian dates. So around 2000 BC, we've found things that were written during their times that look kind of similar, that were just similar ways of communicating truth back then. So possibly Job lived then. And then the last reason that Job was a contemporary and lived during the time of Abraham is there are frequent references to God as El Shaddai. El Shaddai, and God's called El Shaddai 31 times in Job, but only 16 times in other places in the Old Testament. And that was a common name of the patriarchs in the book of Genesis, El Shaddai. Okay, so I hope that makes sense for you. Again, there's different views on that, lots of smart people, but that's my position, is that Job was lived during the time of Abraham and was written shortly after that. An outline for the book that I've created, I divided the book of Job, it's 42 chapters, but I divided it into 3 sections. The first section are chapters 1 and 2, Job's loss of everything. Chapters 1 and 2, Job loses everything. And then chapters 3-37 is Job's conference with his friends. He talks with these friends back and forth from chapter 3 to 37. It's a pretty long discourse. Then chapters 38-42 is Job's conference with God. So Job loses everything, he has a conference with his friends, and then he has a conference with God about that. And that's down there in the description for you as well. And we know that Job was a historical person. He's mentioned in the book of James. James chapter 5 verse 11 mentions the book of Job. And then Ezekiel mentions Job in Ezekiel chapter 14 verse 14 and verse 20. He references Job. So those are some thoughts on the book of Job and some background based on my study. One last thing to share with you based on the book of Job. Job tells us why we suffer. We suffer because Satan roams the earth and sin rules the earth. Two basic things to leave you with. Thanks for watching this video. My name's Christopher Scott. If you found this video helpful, I hope you can subscribe to my monthly email newsletter. There's a link to subscribe to that in the first comment of this video, where I give you, I promise to only send you one email a month. And in that email, I give you links to my articles that were published the previous month. And I give you links to the newest YouTube videos that I've created. So thanks for watching. I hope to catch you again soon on another video.